The gentleman from Georgia.
Mr. Chairman, I have an amendment at the desk.
Clerk will report. Point of order reserved by the gentleman from California.
Amendment to the amendment in the nature of a substitute.
Objection. The amendment will be considered as read.
I object, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. Clerk will read the amendment.
Amendment to the amendment in the nature of a substitute to the committee report for the resolution recommending that the House of Representatives find Merrick B. Garland in contempt of Congress for refusal to comply with a subpoena duly issued by the Committee on the Judiciary, offered by Mr. Johnson of Georgia. On page 13, at the end of the second full paragraph insert, the committee also notes serious concerns about the competency of Donald Trump. The weekend before the committee took up this contempt report in a speech delivered in Wildwood, New Jersey, Mr. Trump praised the fictional serial killer from Silence of the Lambs, quote, the late, great Hannibal Lecter. He's a wonderful man, unquote, and, quote, congratulations, the late, great Hannibal Lecter. We have people that are being released into our country that we don't want in our country, end quote. Mr. Trump also confused the Chinese city of Beijing with the self-governing island of Taiwan and confused the famous tennis player Jimmy Connors with President Jimmy Carter. At a rally in Iowa last January, Mr. Trump declared, think of it, magnets. Now, all I want about magnets is this. Give me a glass of water. Let me drop it on the magnets. That's the end of the magnet. During a series of March campaign rallies, Trump mistook the country of Argentina for a person telling the crowd, you know, Argentina, great guy. He's a big Trump guy. He loves Trump. I love him because he loves Trump. Anybody that loves me, I like them. He also claimed that a poll was a legislative bill called our country the United Stage and made a series of unintelligible noises when describing himself. Ding, boom, this is me, unintelligible, bing. It is not even clear if Mr. Trump knows which of his political opponents he is running against. Mr. Trump has mixed up President Joe Biden and former President Barack Obama on at least 8 different occasions. He confused presidential candidate Nikki Haley with former Speaker Pelosi, inferring that Ambassador Haley was responsible for Capitol security. Mr. Trump has also been confused with respect to foreign leaders. For example, in October 2023, Mr. Trump referred to Hungarian Prime Minister Viktor Orban as a great leader of Turkey. These examples and more raised serious concerns about Mr. Trump's mental competency and ability to serve another term as president.
Gentleman is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman,
the gentleman.
This contempt report that is being considered today is chock full of misleading references to President Biden's age and his mental competency. And throughout this hearing today, I've heard the false allegation made that Special Counsel Hur found that Biden was incompetent to stand trial. That is not what Hur found. He simply questioned the president's memory. And so let's not get it twisted. And speaking of, cognitive impairment, the report that we're considering today conveniently omits serious evidence that the standard bearer for my friends on the other side of the aisle, Donald Trump, is the only candidate who shows any evidence of competency problems. Just this past weekend, in a speech in Wildwood, New Jersey, Mr. Trump bizarrely praised a fictional serial killer from Silence of the Lambs, the late, great Hannibal Lecter. He's a wonderful man, is what the president said. And congratulations, the late, great Hannibal Lecter. We have great people here that are being released into our country. We don't want our country. We don't want in our country. Hear it for yourself. Play the tape.
Silence of the Lamb. Has anyone ever seen the Silence of the Lamb? The late, great Hannibal Lecter. He's a wonderful man, President-Xi of China, talking about Beijing. Now, they've got ships circling, they have planes, but they never were doing anything. I could have pressed Hillary a lot harder. You know, she broke up her phone, she broke them up, she acid washing. Bit bleach, right? Bit bleach. Nobody even knows what it is. All done by Biden. Carried out by Ray. That's right. Jimmy Connors is Jimmy Connors is good. He's also happy. Congratulations, the late, great Hannibal Lecter. We have people that are being released into our country that we don't want in our country. I'm up here screaming like a lunatic.
Ladies and gentlemen, that sad display took place just this past weekend with the former president. He appeared to confuse the Chinese city of Beijing with the self-governing island of Taiwan. He confused Jimmy Connors, a famous tennis player, with Jimmy Carter, the 39th president of the United States.
Would the gentleman yield?
No, I won't. This rant is not a singular event. Last January at a rally in Iowa, Mr. Trump incoherently stated, quote, "Think of it, magnets," end quote. And now all I know about magnets is this: give me a glass of water, let me drop it on the magnets, and that's the end of the magnets, end quote. During a series of March campaign rallies, Trump mistook the country of Argentina for a person, telling the crowd, quote, "You know Argentina, great guy. He's a big Trump guy. He loves Trump. I love him because he loves Trump. Anybody that loves me, I like them," end quote. He also claimed that a poll was a legislative bill, and he called our country the United Stage, and he made a series of unintelligible noises when describing himself. Ding, boom, this is me, bing. It's not even clear if Trump knows which of his political opponents he's running against. Mr. Trump has mixed up President Joe Biden and former President Barack Obama on at least 8 different occasions. He bizarrely mixed up presidential candidate Nikki Haley with former Speaker Pelosi, inferring that Ambassador Haley was responsible for Capitol security. He can't keep straight the names of world leaders. In October of 2023, Mr. Trump referred to Hungarian Prime Minister Viktor Orban as the, quote, great leader of Turkey, end quote. Republicans are intellectually and morally dishonest to criticize President Biden when their dear chosen leader, Donald Trump, presents with symptoms which are quite frankly scary. The American people can see through this Republican charade. This is just an ugly exercise to hurt President Joe Biden. Let's move on. And with that, I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. Gentleman from Kentucky is recognized.
I just wonder if the gentleman from the other side of the aisle is concerned that the additional aid that was voted on to go to Taiwan would cause that island to tip over in any point in the future.
You know what? I hope that the island of Guam is floating on water and not on diesel fuel. That's the point I was making.
Well,
I think that the gentleman might question my mental acuity, but let's look at your dear leader. Let's look at your
reclaiming my time.
Former President Trump. Let's look at
I belong to the gentleman from Kentucky.
Reclaiming my time. I have the utmost respect for my colleague on the other side of the aisle. The point I wanted to make is that sometimes we make statements tongue-in-cheek that we are metaphorically speaking, and that the president most certainly in most of those cases was doing that, as we all have, Republican and Democrat, made statements that if you're taken out of context seem indefensible or ungrounded, if you will. Let me give an example. So the comment on the magnets here, if you give me a glass of water, let me drop it on the magnets at the end of the magnets. I've actually heard the former president, talk about that. And what he's talking about are electromagnets. So there was a discussion about whether the catapults on aircraft carriers should be steam-driven or electromagnetically driven. And it is true that steam is more reliable, that water would not affect the hoses, for instance, but salt water could affect wires that are driving electromagnets. So I think it's disingenuous here to offer this and take many things out of context, to take things that were said tongue-in-cheek, to take things that were said on the campaign trail, and act as if they were meant to be taken literally, because we all, on both sides of the aisle, have said things before that were not meant to be taken literally. And with that, I yield back.
Gentleman yield.
I'll yield, Chairman.
I thank the gentleman for yielding. I think the point is well made. No human beings ever said everything exactly right. We've all made mistakes, whatever. But the fundamental question in front of us is, was the decision not to prosecute consistent with the Department of Justice's commitment to impartial justice? That's the fundamental question. President Trump is getting prosecuted for a classified documents concern. Joe Biden isn't. Biden isn't because, this is what the special counsel said. He said, Mr. Biden's memory appeared to have significant limitations, both at the time he spoke to his monitor in 2017 and as evidenced by their recorded conversations, and today as evidenced by the recorded interview with our office. That's why we want the audio tape. President Trump is the department being impartial. President Trump is getting prosecuted. We know what's going on in Miami. President Biden isn't, and he isn't because of that statement from the special counsel. That statement from the special counsel in light of the facts of the case. The elements of the crime have been met. Mr. Hur sat right at that table and told us Joe Biden knowingly kept classified information and knowingly disclosed classified information. Special counsel told us in his report why Joe Biden did it. He said he had strong motivations to release classified information because he was writing a book for which he got paid $8 million. So we have motive, we have the elements of the crime, but he doesn't get charged, and yet President Trump does. And so this committee, the committee that oversees the Justice Department, has oversight of the Justice Department, wants to know if they are impartially administering justice. And the best way for us to figure all that out is to get all the evidence that the special counsel had at his disposal so we can figure that out and see if there's something we need to do legislatively to change the special counsel statute. But it's all part of our oversight. That's the fundamental question. We can get into things people say. I've said things that, taken out of context, Mr. Massey has, Mr. Johnson had. We've all said it. So that's not the point. The point is that fundamental question. Was it the administration of impartial justice? Were they being consistent? That's what we want to know. I yield back. Thank you, John, for yielding.
Yield the remainder of my time to Mr. Tiffany.
Yeah, and just to add on to the chairman's comments in regards to impartial, I mean, if you go back to the Senate confirmation hearing for this attorney general, he said, I'm going to conduct justice without fear or favor. And he's getting a chance now to live up to those words. Will he provide impartial justice without fear or favor to the American people? That's a question that's before us. I yield back.
Gentleman yields back.
The gentleman yield.
We're out of time. I can go to Mr. Ivey, and I'm sure he'll yield you some time. Or I'm not sure, but I would bet.
Let me go first, and I'll give you time.
15 seconds.
All right, go ahead.
All right. Thank the gentleman. The previous two speakers are concerned about me taking President Trump's comments out of context. This is exactly what they plan on doing if they can get their hands on this audio file. They want to take President Biden's comments out of context. So this is projecting. This is exactly what these Republicans are known for. They do it. That's what their big cheese does, Donald Trump. And with that, I'll yield back.
I thank the gentleman.
Go ahead. I'll get time later.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
It's just not accurate. That's just not that's not our goal.
Well, I got to say, my colleague from Georgia raised the point about taking something out of context. There's certainly a concern about that, and I think it's a legitimate one. To not have the audio tape, but have the transcript, which, again, nobody has actually alleged is incorrect in any way. It's not a verbatim transcript, that the person who took the transcript, violated her oath of office or his oath of office and taking the transcript. No allegations of that over there at all. So I think at this point, it's, you have to assume that it's factually accurate. But I had to get to this point, though, because I've got so many colleagues over there talking about the contrast. Biden wasn't prosecuted, but Trump was. But Herr sat right here. He issued a report that laid all of this out. But just to remind my colleagues that Herr pointed out the distinctions between Trump's case and Biden's case and said, quote, they are clear. There are serious aggravating facts in the Trump case, most notably after being given chances to return classified documents and avoid prosecution. Mr. Trump allegedly did the opposite. According to the indictment, he not only refused to return the documents for many months, but he also obstructed justice by enlisting others to destroy evidence and then lie about it. And he goes on, in contrast, Mr. Biden turned in classified documents to the National Archives and the Department of Justice, consented to the search of multiple locations, including his homes, sat for a voluntary interview, and in other ways cooperated with the investigation. That's the distinction. And that's a distinction that the Department of Justice draws frequently in making decisions about whether to move forward with a criminal prosecution. And, you know, the obvious fact that you guys are ignoring when you talk, well, it's a Democrat versus a Republican, former Vice President Pence was not prosecuted as well for the same sorts of issues for the same reasons. There's a reason Trump sits alone or will sit alone at this criminal trial that's upcoming. It's because he acted to obstruct justice. Biden and Pence did not. And I got to say this, too, just along those lines, because there's sort of this ongoing claim that the Department of Justice is somehow biased and only going after Republicans. But you know, a senator in New Jersey right now, a Democrat, who's about to start a jury trial. I don't know if they're still picking the jury or not, but they were last time that I looked. There's an indictment against a Democrat in Texas right now as well that just came down. It's a tough argument. It really flies in the face of all of these open cases or cases that are moving forward to suggest that for some reason the Department of Justice is only targeting Republicans when it's clear they aren't. And then the last point that you all keep kind of avoiding, Herr sat here and testified. You guys are making allegations today that you did not confront him with at the time. To the extent you raised it, he said, no, I'm not trying to hide anything. I'm not trying to protect the president. We're not trying to slant anything. I did this. I called the balls and strikes as I saw them. And, you know, I think it's a bit of a smear to sort of suggest otherwise. And it's a little unfair to do it now when he's not here, when you had the chance to do it when he was here. And, you know, I don't know. It's kind of frustrating to me. The Judiciary Committee is supposed to be about upholding the rule of law. And I know there are political issues. It's a presidential year and all of that stuff. But you're deliberately distorting the facts over and over and over again. And it really should stop. It really should. And then just one final point on these issues. The Attorney General here, Merrick Garland, 92,000 pages that he's produced over and over, presented witnesses to the committee that other AGs would have refused to permit, especially, you know, lawyers who were in the middle of a criminal investigation or a pending trial. All of you all are ignoring that and trying to act like he's obstructing justice, even though you've got the verbatim transcript of the statement that he gave. With that, my time's expired, and I yield back.
The gentleman yields back. I'll just respond briefly. Our motivation is exactly what I said 5 minutes ago. Is this the impartial administration of justice by the Justice Department? It's nothing else. That's our objective. That's our goal. And the best way to figure all that out is to get all the evidence. That's why we've asked for it. The gentleman from Maryland referenced when Special Counsel Herr was here. I did confront him. I laid out the same things. I know what to ask him. Did Joe Biden knowingly keep classified information? Yes. Did he knowingly release classified information? Yes. And why did he do it? Because he was writing a book. And how much did he get paid for the book? And he told me $8 million. So we laid all that out.
We laid
all that out in that testimony. So I did confront him.
Will the gentleman yield?
Sure.
You confronted him with the facts those facts, but nobody said, you know what? You're not telling the truth. You're not charging him, and you should, because you're trying to protect him. None of you said that. Not one.
Of course I confront him with the facts. That's what you're supposed to do in these hearings. With that, I will yield the balance of my time to the gentleman from New Jersey.
Thank you, Chairman. Let me just say I think you really encapsulated what this is about. You all are good at this. Seriously, and I mean that as a compliment. You're really good at it. You're good at politics. Because, again, we're speaking about the rally in Wildwood, which I happen to be in. As you probably know, that's in my district. I spoke at it. And by the way, you're probably feeling a little bad about it because we had 100,000 people that were from all walks of life, from plumbers to pipe fitters to professionals to engineers and architects and doctors to young people to old people, all excited to be there with 100,000 people. We had no incidents. Nobody got drunk. Nobody got hurt. There were no fights. It was a celebration of America. For an hour and a half, Donald Trump stood up there, mostly extemporaneously speaking about a whole bunch of stuff, having a little bit of fun, sometimes being sarcastic, sometimes being very serious and speaking about America and America freedom and what's happening to our borders, our cities, what's happening to our country in so many different ways that isn't good. But my point is, that's not what this hearing is about. So once again, and the chairman encapsulated it, you're leading us astray. You're good at it. We're getting into a debate about Donald Trump. You're damn good at it. But that is not what this is about. This is about that we have existing transcripts, and we want to know what the demeanor of the current president was. We know what the demeanor of Donald Trump was because you can watch the whole hour and a half on tape. You can look and see what he said, what he did. You don't even need to do anything. I wish we didn't have to have this hearing either. I just wish they turned it over. The chairman wouldn't, I will in a minute, the chairman wouldn't have called this hearing if simply they had said, yes, you can have the video recordings, you can actually check out his demeanor. The problem you have, as good at it as you are, the problem that you have is either that he is cognitively impaired and doesn't know what's going on and what he's doing, or he's not, and he knowingly took all this classified material out and then basically sold it to a ghostwriter to make $8 million. And I know you're in a tight spot, but that's the reality. And so we kind of want to know what it is, and so do the American people want to know what it is. They just want to know the truth. This isn't a big deal. Tell the truth. It sets you free, man. So you can go through this inside out over and over, and I know probably the next speaker on your side is going to have another amendment that's got to do with Donald Trump, but that's not what this is about.
Will the gentleman yield?
Focused on the ball. I will yield.
I hadn't planned on bringing up Donald Trump today. You did it. You're the one that came in and said and tried to, say that Trump was mistreated because he's on trial, but Biden is getting a pass. You brought it up. I just read back to you.
Reclaim my time. No, what I brought up was that you all were we were taking our eye off the ball. We still are. We're into this discussion. Yeah. There's a real serious issue here. And by the way, they obviously don't think, since you've brought it up, that Donald Trump's cognitively impaired because they're prosecuting him in different venues across the country, politically motivated. But I don't want to have that debate now, man. Mr. Ivey, I'd have that debate with you anywhere, anytime you want to do it. I will yield back in a minute.
It's my time. If the gentleman yield back, the gentleman's done with yield back.
I will yield back.
Gentlemen, I would just point out the Jack Smith mishandled the evidence. We don't want to bring up Trump, but in that case, you got the prosecutor who sees the documents and changed the order that he sees the documents. The physical documents don't match up with the actual scanned documents. Some people might say that's tampering with evidence. That happened, and the judge down there said, wait a minute, we got to hold on here. What's going on? And, of course, the irony is Jack Smith mishandled documents while he's charging President Trump with mishandling documents. You can't make this stuff up. So I think in some ways a reference to what's going on with President Trump is entirely appropriate. My time is up. Who seeks recognition? Question occurs then on the amendment from the gentleman from Georgia. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. No. Opinion of the chair, the noes have it, and the amendment is not agreed to. Gentleman has asked for a recorded vote. The clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Jordan?
No.
Mr. Jordan votes no. Mr. Issa? Mr. Gates? Mr. Biggs? Mr. McClintock? Mr. McClintock votes no. Mr. Tiffany? Mr. Tiffany votes no. Mr. Massey? No. Mr. Massey votes no. Mr. Roy? Mr. Bishop? Ms. Spartz? Ms. Spartz votes no. Mr. Fitzgerald? Mr. Fitzgerald votes no. Mr. Benz? Mr. Benz votes no. Mr. Klein? Mr. Armstrong? No. Mr. Armstrong votes no. Mr. Gooden? Mr. Van Drew? No. Mr. Van Drew votes no. Mr. Nels? Mr. Moore? Mr. Moore votes no. Mr. Kiley? Ms. Hageman? Ms. Hageman votes no. Mr. Moran? Ms. Lee? Mr. Hunt? Mr. Fry? Mr. Nadler? Mr. Nadler votes aye. Ms. Lofgren? Ms. Jackson-Lee? Mr. Cohen? Mr. Johnson? Mr. Johnson votes aye. Mr. Schiff? Mr. Swalwell? Mr. Liu? Ms. Jayapal? Mr. Correa? Ms. Scanlon? Mr. Neguse? Ms. McBath? Ms. Dean? Ms. Dean votes aye. Ms. Escobar? Ms. Escobar votes aye. Ms. Ross? Ms. Bush? Mr. Ivey?
Aye.
Mr. Ivey votes aye. Ms. Ballant? Mr. Gooden votes no.
Clerk will record.
Mr.